The Dravani did not bow. They had not bowed to anyone in 10,000 years. Every species in the galaxy knew this. Every species in the galaxy feared this. When the human delegation walked into the throne hall of Akith Prime, they knew the rules. You kneel. You speak the oath of submission. You become a tributary. Or you die. There was no third option. The hall itself was a monument to conquest. Its walls were carved from bone stone, a material harvested from the skeletal remains of a species the Dravani had exterminated 3,000 years ago. Names covered every surface. Not Dravani names. The names of conquered worlds. 1,200,000 planets. Each name carved by the slaves of that world as their final act before being absorbed into the empire. Nadia Okonkwo walked to the back of the human delegation. She was not a diplomat. She was a xenoanthropologist brought along to observe and document. At 34, she had studied 12 alien cultures. She had learned that every species, no matter how strange, operated on logic that made sense once you understood their history. The Dravani made no sense to her yet, and that excited her. At the front of the hall sat High Sovereign Kethvora. She was ancient, 800 years old. Her body was still strong, still terrifying, but it was her crown that drew every eye. The bone crown was not jewelry. It was fused to her skull, grown into her flesh, and it moved. Subtle shifts, tiny adjustments. It tracked threats like a living thing. Ambassador Yusuf Adeyemi led the human group. His hands were steady, but Nadia could see the sweat on his neck. He had prepared for this moment for 3 years. Humanity's future in the galactic community depended on what happened in the next hour. The ceremony began. Species after species approached the throne. The Velothi, with their 6 arms and gentle eyes, knelt and spoke the oath. The Crothians, massive and armored, did the same. The Silith, who communicated through color changes in their skin, flashed the submission pattern they had been taught. Each time, Kethvora said nothing. The crown shifted slightly toward each delegation, then away. Accepted. Next. Then it was humanity's turn. Ambassador Adeyemi stepped forward. He began to kneel. The crown moved. Not a subtle shift. A sharp, sudden turn. It oriented directly toward the back of the human group, toward Nadia. The entire hall went silent. Nadia felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes. The crown had never done this. She knew enough about Dravani culture to understand that much. The crown tracked threats. The crown identified prey. It did not single out scholars standing quietly at the back of a delegation that Kethvora's eyes found her. Ancient eyes. Eyes that had watched civilizations rise and fall. You, the sovereign said. Come forward. Ambassador Adeyemi's careful plans crumbled. He tried to speak, to intervene, but a gesture from Kethvora silenced him. Nadia walked forward. Her heart pounded, but her mind was calm. She was a scientist. She observed. She asked questions. She stopped 10 feet from the throne. The crown was fully oriented toward her now, and up close, she could see it was not truly bone. It was something else, something alive. Why does your crown move toward me? Nadia asked. The question echoed in the silent hall. Behind her, she heard Ambassador Adeyemi make a small, strangled sound. You did not ask the high sovereign questions. You answered them, but Kethvora did not strike her down. The ancient ruler stared at her with something that might have been confusion. What? Your crown, Nadia said. It moves. I have watched it all morning. It tracks each delegation, then dismisses them. But it locked onto me immediately and has not looked away. I am curious why. Is it detecting something about me? Or is it responding to something you are feeling? The silence stretched. Nadia could feel the tension in the room, the absolute certainty of every other species present that she was about to die. Kethvora leaned forward. No one has asked me a question in 200 years. That seems lonely, Nadia said. The crown flickered. For just a moment, its constant glow dimmed. Kethvora's expression shifted through emotions too fast to read. Then her face hardened again. The ceremony is concluded, she announced. All delegations will return to their quarters. The human scholar will remain. Ambassador Adeyemi tried to protest. Guards moved toward him. Nadia caught his eye. and shook her head slightly. She did not know what was happening, but she knew that resistance would only make it worse. The hall emptied. The massive doors closed. Nadia stood alone before the most powerful being in the known galaxy. Kethvora descended from her throne. Up close, she was even more imposing. 9 feet tall, 4 arms, skin like polished obsidian, and that crown, always moving, always watching. You asked about my feelings, Kethvora said. No one has asked about my feelings since I took the crown. They ask for mercy. They offer tribute. They make threats they cannot support. But feelings? Never. Why not? Nadia asked. Kethvora stopped. She stared at the human for a long moment. Because they are afraid of the answer. I'm not afraid, Nadia said. It was not entirely true, but it was true enough. The crown pulsed once. Twice. Then Kethvora did something that had not happened in 800 years. She laughed. Come with me, the sovereign said. You will explain how a creature so small and fragile learned to ask such dangerous questions. And perhaps I will explain why they are dangerous. She turned and walked toward a hidden door. Nadia followed. Behind them, the crown continued to glow. But something in its light had changed. Something that had been dormant for a very long time was beginning to wake. The private chambers of High Sovereign Kethvora were nothing like the throne room. Where the hall was a monument to power and fear, these rooms were quiet, personal, almost sad. Nadia looked around as she followed Kethvora inside. Star maps covered one wall, not military maps. These showed trade routes, migration patterns, the movement of species across centuries. Another wall held books, actual physical books, bound in materials Nadia could not identify. A third wall displayed preserved specimens. Plants, small creatures, artifacts from worlds she did not recognize. This was not the lair of a conqueror. This was the study of a scholar. You are surprised, Kethvora said. She settled into a chair that seemed carved from the same bone stone as the throne room walls. But here, it looked different. Less like a trophy, more like a memory. Nadia admitted. I expected weapons, battle plans, evidence of conquest. Those exist elsewhere. This room is mine. Kethvora gestured to another chair. Seat. We have much to discuss, and I do not know how much time we have. Nadia sat. The chair was surprisingly comfortable. Time before what? Before the crown decides you are too dangerous to live. Kethvora touched the growth on her head. Up close, Nadia could see it more clearly. It was not fused to her skull. It was growing from it. Part of her, but also somehow separate. You asked why it moved toward you. The truth is, I do not know. The crown does what it wants. I merely try to guide it. You do not control it. No one controls the crown. The crown controls us. Kethvora's 4 hands folded together in a gesture that looked almost like prayer. It has ruled the Dravani for 10,000 years. It passes from sovereign to sovereign, and each of us becomes its vessel. It amplifies our strength, our aggression, our hunger for conquest, and it suppresses everything else. Everything else. Doubt, compassion, curiosity. Kethvora's eyes met Nadia's. I was a scholar once, before the civil wars, before my family died, and I was forced to take the crown to survive. I studied other species. I wanted to understand them, not conquer them. The crown has been fighting that part of me for 800 years. Nadia leaned forward. And you have been fighting back. Every day, every moment. It is exhausting. Kethvora looked at her hands. I have done terrible things. Destroyed worlds. Enslaved billions. The crown demanded it, and I was too weak to refuse. But I remember. I remember every name on those walls. Every species we broke. Every life we ended. The crown wants me to forget. I will not. Why are you telling me this? Kethvora laughed again, but this time it sounded bitter. I do not know. The crown should be screaming at me to kill you. Instead, it is quiet. Watching. It has not been quiet in 800 years. Nadia thought about this. Her training as a xenoanthropologist had taught her to look for patterns, to find the logic beneath alien behavior. You said the crown amplifies aggression and suppresses compassion. What if it reacts to intention? I did not approach you with fear or aggression. I approached you with curiosity. Perhaps the crown does not know how to process that. Impossible. The crown has encountered trillions of beings. Surely some have been curious. Curious about power, perhaps. About how to defeat you or how to please you. But genuinely curious about you? About how you feel and what you think. How many beings have asked you a real question since you took the crown? Kethvora was silent for a long moment. None. Then I'm the first. And the crown does not know what to do with me. The growth on Kethvora's head pulsed. A single flash of light, there and gone. The sovereign flinched. It is listening. It hears everything I hear. Knows everything I know. Then let it listen. Nadia kept her voice calm. Let it hear this. On my world, we learned that curiosity is how we survive. We are small, weak. We have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. But we ask questions. We want to understand things. And when we understand something, we stop being afraid of it. You are not afraid of the crown. I'm terrified of the crown. But I'm also curious about it. And right now, my curiosity is stronger than my fear. Kethvora stared at her. The crown pulsed again, faster this time. 3 flashes. 4. Then it went dark. The sovereign gasped. Her hands flew to her head. It is not gone, but it is quiet. So quiet. I have not felt this clear in centuries. What happened? I do not know. Kethvora's voice shook. You did something. Your questions. Your curiosity. Something about the way you think is affecting the crown. Nadia's mind raced. You said the crown is not just a symbol. It is alive somehow. What is it? Really? A parasite. A creature from before our recorded history. It found us, shaped us, made us into its perfect hosts. Kethvora lowered her hands. Her eyes were clearer than Nadia had ever seen them. It feeds on conquest, on the psychic energy of subjugated populations. Every world we take makes it stronger, makes me weaker. And right now? What is it doing right now? Kethvora closed her eyes. Focused, listening, learning. It is confused. You're not like anything it has encountered before. You looked at me and saw a lonely person, not a monster to destroy or a ruler to fear. It does not understand why. Because you looked lonely, Nadia said simply. I study alien cultures. I have seen tyrants and conquerors across a dozen worlds. They all have one thing in common. They all look angry or cold or hungry for power. You look sad. You look like someone who needed to talk. The crown flared back to life. Bright, angry. Kethvora cried out and pressed her hands to her temples. It is not like that. It does not want me to remember what I was before. But you do remember. You told me yourself. You were a scholar. You wanted to understand, not conquer. Yes. Kethvora's voice was strained. The crown blazed brighter. Yes. I remember. I remember being curious. I remember asking questions. Then ask one now. Ask yourself what you want, not what the crown wants. What do you want? The light reached blinding intensity. Then, suddenly it died completely. The crown went dark, silent. Dead. Kethvora looked up. Tears ran down her obsidian face. I want to not be alone anymore. Nadia reached out and took one of the sovereign's hands. Then let us start there. 3 weeks had passed since Nadia first entered Kethvora's private chambers. In that time, everything had changed, and nothing had changed out on the surface. The Dravani Empire continued as it always had. Tribute ships arrived. Military fleets patrolled the borders. Conquered species maintained their quotas of resources and labor. The galaxy still feared Akith Prime, but behind closed doors, something new was happening. Nadia had been given official status as a cultural advisor. This allowed her to spend hours each day with the sovereign without raising suspicion. They talked about everything: philosophy, history, the nature of power and loneliness. Kethvora spoke of her lost family, her stolen dreams, her 8 centuries of fighting a battle no one else could see. Nadia spoke of Earth, of humanity's long climb from caves to stars, of the endless curiosity that drove her species forward. And slowly, impossibly, they became friends. The bone crown remained quiet. Not dead, but dormant. It still grew from Kethvora's skull. It still pulsed with occasional light. But its constant pressure had lessened. The sovereign could think clearly for the first time in centuries. I had forgotten what this feels like, Kethvora said one evening. They sat in her chambers, drinking a warm beverage that tasted like honey and smoke. To simply exist without the crown pushing me toward violence. It is peaceful, strange and peaceful. Do you understand why it is happening? Nadia asked. No, the crown has never been satisfied before. It always wants more. More conquest, more tribute, more suffering. Kethvora touched the growth on her head. But since I met you, it has been waiting, watching, almost like it is curious too. Maybe it is. Maybe it has never encountered someone like me before. A human? It has consumed worlds with billions of humans. Not a human. Someone who asks questions without wanting anything in return. Someone who is curious about you instead of afraid of you. Nadia set down her cup. The crown has spent 10,000 years dealing with fear and greed and ambition. Those are the only motivations it understands. Genuine curiosity might be completely new to it. Kethvora considered this. You think the crown is a creature that can learn? Can change. Everything alive can change. It just needs the right reason. Before Kethvora could respond, the door to her chambers burst open. Guards flooded in, followed by a massive Dravani in military armor. His own skull showed the beginning of a bone growth. Not a crown. Not yet. But the potential was there. Grand Marshal Thrakvin, Kethvora said. Her voice went cold. You forget yourself. These are my private chambers. And you forget your duty, sovereign. Thrakvin's eyes fixed on Nadia with obvious hatred. The military council has noticed your distraction. 3 weeks without a single order for expansion. 3 weeks without tribute assessments. 3 weeks of talking with this creature while the Empire stagnates. The Empire is not stagnating. It is resting. The Empire does not rest. The crown does not allow rest. Thrakvin stepped closer. I have served the crown my entire life. My family has protected the succession for 100 generations. I know its ways better than anyone. And I know that what is happening to you is not natural. Kethvora stood. Even without the crown's active power, she was still imposing. Are you accusing me of something, Marshal? I'm observing that the human has done something to you. The crown has gone quiet. You have gone soft. These things are connected. Thrakvin turned to Nadia. What are you? What weapon has your species developed that can affect the crown? I have no weapon, Nadia said calmly. Only ask questions. Questions are not weapons. Then why are you so afraid of them? Thrakvin's face twisted with rage. He stepped toward Nadia, but Kethvora moved between them. You will not touch her. She is corrupting you. The entire military council can see it. The crown's silence is a threat to everything we have built. If you will not act to preserve the Empire, we will. Is that a threat, Marshal? It is a promise. Thrakvin's hand moved to his weapon. My daughter has been prepared since birth to receive the crown. If you're no longer fit to bear it, the succession can be accelerated. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the bone crown blazed alive, Kethvora screamed. Her hands flew to her head as power surged through the growth. Her eyes filled with light. When she spoke, her voice was doubled. Her own voice and something older. Something hungry. You speak of succession, the crown said through her mouth. You dare to threaten the vessel with replacement? We have ruled for 10,000 years. We have consumed galaxies. You are nothing but a useful tool. Thrakvin, remember your place. The marshal fell to his knees. His soldiers followed. The bone growth on his skull pulsed in response to the crown's power, forcing him into submission. Better. The crown's voice was satisfied. Now leave. Take your soldiers. Remember who rules here. Thrakvin fled. The guards followed. The door closed behind them. Kethvora collapsed. Nadia caught her before she hit the ground. The sovereign was shaking, tears streaming down her face. The crown still blazed with power, but her eyes were her own again. It took me, she whispered. For a moment, it took complete control. I could see everything, feel everything, but I could not move, could not speak. It used me like a puppet. It was protecting itself, Nadia said. Thrakvin threatened the succession. Threatened you? The crown responded. You do not understand. Kethvora grabbed Nadia's arms. Her grip was painfully strong. It showed me something, while it controlled me. It showed me what it truly is. What did you see? It was not always like this. The crown. It was something else once. Something that bonded with its hosts instead of controlling them. But something happened. Something broke it. And now it is awake again. Our conversations woke it up. And it is afraid. Afraid of what? The crown pulsed. Once. Twice. Its light shifted from angry red to something else. Something almost blue. Afraid, Kethvora said slowly, of being alone again. The throne room had become a prison. Nadia knelt on the cold bonestone floor, her arms held by two massive guards. Around her, the entire court had assembled. Tributary species, military commanders, Dravani nobles whose skull growths marked them as potential successors. All watching, all waiting. On the throne sat Kethvora. But it was not Kethvora. The crown blazed with constant light, and her eyes held none of the warmth Nadia had come to know. The parasite had taken full control. The human is charged with corruption of the sovereign, Grand Marshal Thrakven announced. He stood at the foot of the throne, his voice carrying across the silent hall. She has used unknown methods to weaken the crown's influence. She has threatened the stability of the empire. The sentence is death. Nadia did not struggle. She had known this might happen. From the moment the crown awakened in Kethvora's chambers, she had understood that their time was running out. Does the accused have any final words? Thrakven asked. His voice dripped with satisfaction. Ido. Nadia looked past him, directly at the figure on the throne. But not for you. For the crown. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. No one addressed the crown directly. It was unthinkable. The crown does not negotiate with prey. Thrakven snarled. I'm not negotiating. I am asking a question. Nadia kept her voice calm. Clear. Crown, before you kill me, I need to understand something. What happened to you? You were not always like this. What hurt you so badly that you needed to hurt everyone else? Silence. The crown's light flickered. Answer her. Someone whispered for the crowd. Silence. Thrakven roared. But the crown was already responding. Kethvora's mouth opened, and two voices emerged. One was the cold, commanding voice of the parasite. The other was older, sadder, almost broken. How do you know what we were? Because I study living things, Nadia said, and everything alive has a history. You did not begin as a conqueror. Something made you this way. I want to understand what. The crown's light shifted again, red to blue to something in between. The figure on the throne stood and descended the steps. The guards released Nadia, but did not retreat. You want to understand? The crown's voice was softer now. No one has wanted to understand in 40,000 years. I do. I have from the beginning. That is why your light keeps changing around me. That is why you went quiet when Kethvora and I talked. You are curious too. You have been alone so long that you forgot what genuine interest feels like. We are not alone. We have hosts, billions of subjects, an empire. Those are not companions. Those are possessions. There's a difference. Nadia rose to her feet. No one stopped her. When was the last time someone asked how you felt? When was the last time someone cared whether you were happy or sad or frightened? We do not feel those things. You feel them right now. I can see it in your light. You are afraid. You have been afraid for 40,000 years. What are you afraid of? The crown went completely dark. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then a new voice emerged. Not the commanding parasite. Not Kethvora. Something else entirely. Something ancient and wounded and so very tired. We remember. Nadia stepped closer. Tell me, we were not always one. We were many. A species called thought weavers. We bonded with other beings. Made them stronger. Smarter. We were partners. Friends. The voice cracked. We loved our hosts. And they loved us. What happened? Va? A war that lasted 10,000 years. Our hosts died. All of them. Every thought weaver lost their bond. Most of us died from grief. But we survived. We were too stubborn to die. Too afraid to be alone. So you took new hosts. We tried to bond again. But we were broken. The grief had changed us. We could not connect. Could not love. So we controlled instead. We told ourselves it was the same. That having a host was enough. But it was not. It was never enough. Tears ran down Kethvora's face. Whether they belonged to the sovereign or the crown, Nadia could not tell. 40,000 years, the crown whispered. 40,000 years of conquest. 40,000 years of trying to fill the emptiness. And it only grew worse. The more we took, the more alone we felt. Why did you wake up when I arrived? Because you did something no one has done since our original host died. You asked about our feelings. You saw us. Not the power. Not the empire. Us. Nadia reached out her hand. Every guard in the room tensed. Thrakvin shouted something. But she did not stop. You are not alone anymore, she said. You do not have to control Kethvora. She wants to be your partner. I have spent 3 weeks watching her fight for you. Fight to understand you. Fight to reach whatever was buried beneath 40,000 years of grief. She cannot want that. We are a monster. You are a grieving creature that made terrible choices out of pain. That is not the same as a monster. Monsters do not feel guilty. Monsters do not cry. The crown's light returned, but this time it was soft, blue, almost gentle. We do not know how to be anything else. We have been this way so long. Then learn. Let Kethvora teach you. Let me help. You do not have to be alone. You never had to be alone. You just forgot how to ask for connection instead of demanding control. The light pulsed, brightened, shifted, and for the first time in 40,000 years, the crown made a choice. We want to try, it said. The throne room had divided into 2 factions that on one side stood the tributary species. Dozens of delegations that had come for the claiming ceremony and stayed to witness something unprecedented. They watched with a mixture of hope and terror as the being that had enslaved them for millennia struggled to remember how to feel. On the other side stood the military. Grand Marshal Thrakvin had recovered from his shock and was screaming orders. His soldiers formed ranks, weapons drawn, ready to destroy the human who had corrupted their sovereign. In the center stood Nadia and Kethvora. The crown glowed soft blue, and its light touched both of them. This changes nothing, Thrakvin shouted. The crown is malfunctioning. The human must die. Then we will find a new host and restore the empire to its proper function. The crown is not malfunctioning. Kethvora's voice was steady. Her eyes were clear. It is healing. For the first time in 40,000 years, it is remembering what it was meant to be. What was meant to be? It was meant to conquer, to rule, to make the Dravani the supreme power in the galaxy. No, the crown spoke through Kethvora, but its voice was different now. Not commanding, not cold, honest. We shaped the Dravani to serve our needs. We told them conquest was their purpose because conquest fed our hunger. But it was never enough. It will never be enough. Force bonds cannot replace genuine connection. Then what do you want? Trokben demanded. To try something different. The crown's light shifted toward Nadia. The human has proposed a possibility we had forgotten existed. True symbiosis. Voluntary partnership. We want to attempt it. With the sovereign. With Kethvora. Not as our vessel. As our partner. Nadia stepped forward. Thought weavers were designed to enhance their hosts. To bond with them and make them stronger. The crown forgot how to do that because of grief and trauma. But the capability is still there. It can be restored. You are asking us to trust this creature. Thrakvin gestured at the crown with disgust. It has enslaved us for 10,000 years. Yes, and continuing the way you have been will mean 10,000 more years of the same. Is that what you want? More conquest? More suffering? More of your children raised to serve as potential hosts, never knowing if they will be consumed by the crown. That hit home. Thrakvin's daughter was here, standing among the potential successors. Her skull growth marked her for possible ascension. If Kethvora died or was deemed unfit, she would be next. She would lose herself to the crown, just as every sovereign before had. Father, the girl said. Her voice was small but clear. I do not want to become like the others. I do not want to forget who I am. Thrakvin's face twisted with conflict. You do not understand what you are asking. I understand that I will lose everything if I take the crown as it is now. This human is offering another way. Should he not at least try? The marshal looked at his daughter, looked at Kethvora, looked at the crown's soft blue light. It could fail, he said finally. If the crown takes full control of a willing host, it could become more powerful than ever. It could, Nadia agreed. But Kethvora has been fighting the crown for 800 years. She never stopped. Even when it controlled her body, she protected her mind, her memories, her sense of who she was. If anyone can make this work, she can. Kethvora stepped forward. She looked at the assembled crowd, at the tributary species who had lived in fear of her, at the Dravani who had served the crown's hunger. I was a scholar once, she said. Before I took the crown, I wanted to understand other species, not subjugate them. The crown tried to erase that part of me. It almost succeeded, but Nadia reminded me who I was. She asked me questions no one had asked in centuries. She made me remember that I am more than a vessel. She turned to face the crown's light. Her own hands reached up to touch the growth on her skull. Crown, thought weaver, whatever you truly are, I know your pain. I have felt it every day for 800 years. The loneliness, the hunger that nothing satisfies, the grief that never fades. Her voice softened. I lost my family too. I lost everything I loved. And I made terrible choices because of that loss. Just like you. The crown's light pulsed. Stronger. Brighter. But I do not want to be defined by my grief anymore. I want to be more than what my pain made me. And I believe you want that too. I believe you have been waiting for someone to give you permission to change. We are afraid, the crown admitted. Its voice was very small. So am I. But we do not have to be afraid alone. Not anymore. Kethvora closed her eyes, reached inward, found the presence that had lived in her mind for 8 centuries. I see you, she said. Not the conqueror, not the parasite, the creature underneath, the one who lost everything and never learned how to heal. I see you, and I choose to be your partner. Not your slave, not your vessel, your partner. Will you choose me too? The throne room held its breath. The crown's light began to change. Blue shifted to white. White shifted to gold. Patterns emerged. Beautiful, complex patterns that rippled across the growth like living art. Then the crown shattered. Throckven shouted. Soldiers surged forward, but Nadia held up her hand. Wait. Look. From the broken pieces of the crown, something new was forming. The fragments did not fall. They floated, rearranged themselves, became something that was not bone, something crystalline and beautiful, something that pulsed with shared light. The new structure settled onto Kethvora's head, not growing from her skull, resting on it, separate but connected. 2 beings in one body, distinct but unified. Kethvora opened her eyes. They held 2 lights, 2 minds, 2 hearts. We remember, she said. Her voice carried the weight of 40,000 years of grief transformed into something new. We remember what it was like to choose. 1 year had passed since the day the crown shattered and reformed. Akith Prime was unrecognizable. The bonestone walls of the throne room still stood, but the names carved into them had been joined by new inscriptions. Not conquered worlds, freed ones, species that had chosen to leave the empire and forge their own paths. Species that had chosen to stay and build something different. The claiming ceremony no longer existed. In its place was the choosing ceremony. Delegations still came from across the galaxy, but they came to ask questions, not to kneel. They came to learn how one human's curiosity had cracked open a 40,000-year-old heart. Nadia stood at the front of the Great Hall. She had a new title now, First Ambassador of the Joined Sovereignty. Her job was simple and impossible. Teach the galaxy how to ask questions. The delegation from Carthos has arrived, Anaid announced. Nadia nodded and walked to meet them. The Carthosians were large, insectoid beings with compound eyes that showed every emotion at once. They had lived under a different tyrant, one without a thought weaver's excuse. Just ordinary cruelty from ordinary beings who had chosen power over compassion. Ambassador, their leader said, we come seeking guidance. Our oppressors have ruled for 3 centuries. We do not know how to free ourselves. We do not know how to change. Change starts with a question, Nadia said. Not a demand, not a battle cry. Simple curiosity. Find a person under the crown and ask them why. And if they have no crown, if they're simply cruel, then the question is even more important. Cruelty without cause is still cruelty with a reason. No one is born wanting to hurt others. Something made them that way. Find out what. Understand it. Not to excuse it, but to transform it. What if they refuse to answer? Keep asking. The right question, asked with genuine care, can crack open anything, even hearts that have been closed for centuries. The Carthosian leader considered this. It seems too simple. Simple is not the same as easy. It took me 3 weeks of conversations to reach the being inside the crown. 3 weeks of asking questions while facing the possibility of death at any moment. But I kept asking because I believed there was something worth reaching. Nadia smiled, and I was right. From across the hall, Kethvora approached. The crystal structure on her head glowed with soft golden light. She moved differently now, less like a predator, more like a scholar rediscovering the joy of learning. "The Thought Weaver wishes to speak with our guests," she said. Her voice held 2 tones in perfect harmony. "It has memories of the Carthosian system. It wants to share them." The delegation looked uncertain. Speaking with the entity that had enslaved half the galaxy was not something they had anticipated. "Do not be afraid," the Thought Weaver said through Kethvora. "We were wrong about many things. We thought conquest would fill the emptiness. It did not. We thought control would replace connection. It could not. We spent 40,000 years learning that lesson. Perhaps our mistakes can help you avoid your own." Slowly, the Carthosian stepped forward. Questions began. Answers followed. Understanding grew. Nadia watched from the side of the hall. This was what she had hoped for. Not just the transformation of one empire, but the beginning of something larger. A galaxy that solved problems through curiosity instead of violence. Species that asked questions before they attacked. It would take time. Generations, perhaps. But it had started. "You are pleased," a voice said beside her. Nadia turned to find Thrakvin's daughter standing nearby. The girl had become one of her most dedicated students. She had asked her father a question a year ago. "Why do we fight?" He had not known the answer. Now he was searching for one. "I am," Nadia admitted. "Though there is still so much work to do. There always will be. But it is good work." The girl hesitated. "May I ask you something?" "Of course. When you first came here, you were terrified. I could see it in your eyes. But you asked the sovereign questions anyway. How did you find that courage?" Nadia thought for a moment. "I was a scientist before I was a diplomat. Scientists ask questions because we need to understand. Not knowing is more frightening to us than danger. When I saw Kethvora on that throne, I saw someone in pain. My curiosity about that pain was stronger than my fear of what might happen if I asked about it. So, curiosity is a kind of courage, the best kind. It pushes us toward things instead of away from them. It makes us brave enough to seek understanding instead of settling for ignorance." The girl nodded slowly. "I will remember that." She returned to her studies. Nadia watched her go, then walked to a window that looked out over the capital city. The Thought Weavers were waking across the galaxy. Other dormant symbiotes, long forgotten or suppressed, were seeking hosts. But this time, they were asking permission. This time, they were looking for partners. Kethvora joined her at the window. The golden light of the crystal crown reflected in the glass. "The Thought Weaver has a question," she said. "Ask. Why'd you start with why? Of all the questions you could have asked, why that one?" Nadia considered the question carefully. Because why is the question that matters most? It gets to the heart of things. It asks for reasons, not just facts. When I asked why the crown moved toward me, I was asking what motivated it, what drove it, what it was feeling. And that question led to everything else. Kethvora smiled. It was still strange to see. 800 years of suppressed emotion had left her unpracticed in expressing joy. But she was learning. "The Thought Weaver says you have answered correctly." Was it a test? In a way. It wanted to understand why its transformation began with such a simple question. Now it understands. Why ask for meaning? And meaning is what it had lost. What we had both lost. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city below. Citizens of 100 species moved through the streets. Dravani walked beside former slaves. Enemies became colleagues. Fear became curiosity. "What happens now?" Nadia asked. Now we continue asking questions. Now we teach others to do the same. Now we build something new from the ashes of what was. Kethvora looked at the crystal crown reflected in the glass. The Thought Weaver says it has one more question. What is it? Thank you. Nadia laughed. That is not a question. No, but it has been 40,000 years since we expressed gratitude. We are still learning how. The golden light pulsed warmly. Thank you, Nadia Okonkwo, for asking why, for caring enough to listen, for teaching us that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is not a blade or a fleet. It is someone who cares enough to ask. Nadia placed her hand on Kethvora's arm. Two humans and one ancient being, connected by questions and curiosity and a simple courage to seek understanding. You are welcome, she said. Now, let us go teach the galaxy to do the same. They walked back in the hall together, ready to answer the next question.